All right, let's see. A flight for just $200. Looks like I'll have to do a layover. Oh, wait. 2, 3, 4, 5 layovers on 3 different airlines. At least the price is good. Wait. Booking fee, luggage fee, standing in line fee, not bringing a service animal fee, service charge for service charge fee. Well, the good news is it only takes 27 hours to fly from LaGuardia to JFK. Still better than taking a New York City cab, that's for sure.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the No Vacancy podcast with me, Glenn Hausman. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today with me. And boy, have I been going around and doing a lot of fun stuff. And today we got a great guest coming right up. She's there. She's keeping quiet right now because I told her I was going to blab for a little while, but stick around because after the commercial break, I speak to an analyst from the Points Guy, and we're going to talk about our least favorite and favorite airlines according to a survey that they did, an internal thing. They scored it. They figured it all out, and they will tell you who the best airline is, who is the worst. Hint, hint. We already know the worst airline is going to probably be Spirit, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So one of the things that I fret about in my day-to-day life, and you guys don't know this, but I can't do my job without the wonderful help of the good folks out there in the PR community. They're the ones that help make me look good because God knows I can't do it on my own, so I need a lot of people. So before we get into that, I just want to make sure that you guys follow me at Traveling Glenn on Twitter, or read some of the stuff that I do at hotelmanagement.net, where I serve as their editor at large. And plus, make sure you check me out. I'm going to be at the AHOA conference coming up April 12th, 13th, and 14th. Why? Because I'm going to be broadcasting live from that show. It's going to be a lot of fun. But talking about fun, I have with me Jennifer Hawkins of Hawkins International Public Relations. And boy, Jennifer, I feel like I've known you for too long. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you for asking. I'm sitting in my sunny New York City office, and I always am feeling like I have the best job in the world.
You certainly do have a great job. Although I flirted with PR for a little while, and quite honestly, I couldn't hack it. I kept feeling like I was the man stuck in the middle, trying to manage my boss's expectations and client expectations, and it's impossible to be a win when they sell a client on, yeah, we'll have you on that cover of the Wall Street Journal next week. So
we were obviously working at the wrong PR agency.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I just retreated in fear and went into the back into the journalism side, where I've now been pretty steadily for the last 15 years or so. So, Jennifer, I think the best way to orient our conversation is tell me a little bit about Hawkins International. And by me, I mean them, because I already know what you do.
Sure. Hawkins International is a public relations firm that specializes in the hospitality industry. And even to take it a step further, we really specialize in the luxury hospitality industry. So by that, I mean hotels, resorts, spas, cruise lines, airlines. We have amazing tour operators such as safaris in Africa. So any product, and in this case, hotels or resorts, that are really trying to penetrate the U.S. market, we're used as their ambassadors, as their PR people, and really their bridge to the media. So the media, obviously, is anything from radio, TV, print, magazine, influencers, and social media now. So we help clients all over the world, hotels and whatnot, that hire us so that they can have sort of a seat at the table and hopefully be represented in the U.S. market.
Yeah, that's right. And, I get a lot of road warriors listening to this, so they don't really understand how all of this works. So I wanted to today, with you, peel back the veneer on how all of this works. Now, Jennifer and her Crackjack team has done a great job working with amazing brands such as Intercontinental Hotels and Resorts and Lowe's Hotels and Resorts, Montage, Omni. I could just go on and on and on. Dream is one of the cool brands that you're working with now. You've done work with JW Marriott's. You've worked with Accor Hotels and lots of independent hotels like Keneal Bay and blah, 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 blah. I could just go on and on and on. How awesome is that you're working with all these preeminent brands?
No, it's amazing. And, a lot of the brands that you mentioned in your particular case are brands even in the U.S. And we do a lot of independent hotels that are really even at less advantage than the big brands. So we do like the Guanahani in St. Bart's or Jumbie Bay in Antigua or Eden Rock in Cap Cana. There's a lot of different hotels, and also within brands, there's independent hotels, such as we do the Dorchester collection, which includes the Beverly Hills or the Bel Air or the Dorchester in London, Plaza Ethne in Paris. A lot of people know those hotels as standalone, and they don't know that they're either managed or owned by a bigger brand. So we're very fortunate that we get to work with so many of the top, but there's a lot of need for independent hotels to have marketing and PR support, because otherwise they'll get slammed by the big brands. I mean, you remember Marriott and Starwood are now one. How does an independent hotel like Stad Palace in Switzerland, which is the only remaining Swiss family-owned resort in Switzerland left, how do they break through that clutter?
Right.
So we help them do that so that they're not, feeling like they're competing with every, like I think Starwood and Marriott combined now have more than 20 brands collectively.
32. Yeah, it's
32. There you go. Can't even keep track.
I know it's unbelievable right now. I'm not even sure the folks at Marriott can keep track of them anymore. And that's not making fun of them. It's just it's so many.
No, it's not
brands.
making fun, but it's there is a tendency toward this sort of this merging, and there's a lot of benefit that brands get from being part of that, or hotels get from being part of a bigger brand. But then there are those like special gems of independence, like a Keneal Bay, like you mentioned. They broke away from Rosewood several years ago and are operated and owned independently. And they have been doing gangbusters in terms of business and revenue and profit, and in our case, we're able to promote them as an independent hotel. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it really is exciting. And for a guy like me, and again, this is for all the listeners out there, it's one of the comments I get is like, Glenn, how do you know everything that's going on all the time? And that's because I have a lot of friends out there of my network of PR people, folks that I could not deliver great stories to you time and time again unless I have them. And I find that we're a team, right? The journalist side and the PR side is a team. And unfortunately, not everybody recognizes that. But I embrace it. I love it. And working with folks like you makes my life just so much easier and brings clarity to my stories, while also on your side, I guess, helping to bring to the forefront lots of companies and brands that I never would have considered at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we feel, is that because we are on we're a tiny little office here with 30 people in New York City, but we have clients globally. I'm off to, South Africa and Botswana in 2 weeks. We're hired by the safari company, but, they need to have presence here. The U.S. is a very active travel market for most countries elsewhere. And, it's really important that they're represented in the media appropriately, and not just with travel agents and not just on social media, but really, and I think journalists want that. Journalists want to know what's kind of interesting and new, and not just, sort of prepackaged big brand stuff.
Right. And those are the stories that I'm always looking for. Things that are interesting, things that are different, which is why I rely on good folks such as you and all my other PR friends out there. But I find that during the time I've been in the industry, the art of public relations and hospitality has changed dramatically. It used to be more of just, hey, we're here. Now it's all about crafting a story behind the brand and really being able to connect all those dots that relate to current consumer behavior trends at all. Is that something that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, any good journalist, even travel PR, even travel journalists, people who work for the travel publications or food publication, or whether it's the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, everybody is looking for authentic data. They're looking for, real facts, and they're also looking for something that, brings, if I just promoted a hotel that I have in Miami, I wouldn't be doing it justice. I have to promote the destination. I have to promote the amenities. I have to promote sort of, the KPI, what you get for it. In the case I'm talking about Miami, I have a client called the Carillon. It's the former Canyon Ranch, but they have like the best spa in all of South Florida. So if I just said like there was a great hotel that has a great beach, it's not differentiating itself from the Delano or the Fontainebleau. You have to kind of we have to help our clients figure out what their differentiator is,
right,
and then tell it in a narrative, interesting, compelling story to the journalist so that they in turn find it interesting enough to seek out more information or go experience it. That's truly my approach with our clients is we want you, Glenn, not to read a great press release or see a great video or, see a picture that a client has taken. We want you to go experience that
right,
safari in Botswana or that spa in South Beach or, the Polo Lounge in Beverly Hills. It's experiential, and that's what I love about travel. And we're just really purveyors. We want to be the bridge to the experience that the journalist ultimately will have. And we know that your listeners, your readers, are going to look to you as, a person of authority.
Right.
So that's what's really exciting for us, is that we feel like we really are an integral part of the sort of picture of how a hotel does increase its business.
How has your world changed over the last 10 years as this social media thing has become more prominent? And then everybody also thinks that they're a journalist, which really infuriates, I'm putting air quotes in, journalists like me.
Well, that's our job, and that's one of the things that we want to take on for our clients, because there are, believe me, our clients get tons of requests. Who doesn't want to stay at, the Beverly Hills Hotel in Beverly Hills? So it's up to us to help them really vet, because and there's plenty of legitimate journalists out there, but they don't necessarily fit the demographic or write for the right outlet that we're seeking. So on the social media side, again, we've grown in the last half dozen years our own internal digital team, and that's been very, very exciting for us because we've tapped into a whole new this influencer world, and our clients are really excited about it because it helps them increase their own social media presence by using third party. But you have to be very agile and very sophisticated in how you approach social digital. We've not jumped into it. We've sort of segued into it.
Right.
Because
kind of like me trying to get into a cold pool. First
exactly.
First
Exactly.
I dip my toe in, then I'm up to my knees, and then I get to I get to my waist and I freak out for a little while, and then I kind of go the rest of the way in.
Exactly. So it's an exciting time, I think, in the media world that, you can, have a lot of different outlets as a journalist, and it's up to us to help our clients figure out which ones are, going to be appropriate for them and help them drive their business ultimately.
Yeah, I love what
it's exciting.
Yeah, I love what you said about influencers, because that's kind of where my world is, right? I'm trying to position myself out there as an influencer between the podcast, my gig at Hotel Management, the speaking gigs that I do out there, and all of the other self-serving stuff that I should be promoting right now, like my new deal for HereToStay.tv for Bridge Street Global Hospitality, all of those kinds of things. So I love working with folks like you because I think you make me better at my job too, and make me look like the influencer that I like to think I am.
Exactly, but I think there needs to be a reciprocity between a really legit journalist such as yourself and the PR people, because the hotels, like I'm just talking to a big hotel company in Asia. I need them to have like a lot of confidence and faith and trust in us as clear representations of who they are. I want them to like know that I've got their best interest at heart, and I'm only going to send them or have written about them amazing press that's legitimate, and it's that old saying of, quality over quantity. I don't need to send them 30 journalists if I can send, they're just going to be bodies and not really produce anything that interesting or compelling. But if I could send them 10 great journalists that are really going to move the needle for them, so much more valuable. So that's why having that relationship with journalists for us is really key. And we need to be really judicious about who we work with and how we work with them.
Well, yeah, because your reputation is at stake. Not only that, but your ability to pay your staff is at stake too.
Yeah. Well, I always say to clients and new clients, listen, and not all of them understand it at first, and I think ultimately if they work with us, they do, which is I've got two very clear constituents. Yes, a client, i.e. a hotel, resort, spa, cruise line, might pay me monthly, and a journalist, of course, does not pay me, but both of these audiences, both of these slices are equally important to me. Because, listen, a lot of the journalists that I've worked with for like a dozen years.
Right.
They might be at different publications. They might have a different beat. They might be freelancing instead of on staff or vice versa. But they keep coming back to the well here because they trust us. They believe in the content that we're providing for them. And same with the clients. They trust that we're going to tell them that, listen, this magazine isn't really going to write about you because, you say that your food's great, but it's not. So it's up to us to, be very clear and honest and productive. We're not, interested in burning bridges with journalists by saying, listen, no, you can't go to this, resort because, but it needs to be very respectful and a lot of reciprocity.
And that's tough for you because I like to think that I'm respectful and in it for the team aspect of it because I know that we rely on each other for our mutual success. But there's a lot of journalists out there, and I'll use double air quotes on them. They seem to just be out to get free stuff, and then they seem to be the ones that get the most pissed from anybody else. And that's got to be a chore for your team to deal with as well.
Well, it is, but that's again, that's why clients pay us because we're very interested in, not going on face value. If a journalist tells us that they write for a particular publication, it's pretty easy for us to figure it out if they're, being truthful or not. Or, we have lots of sources and ways to get to the truth, as it were. But we need that, because listen, also, PR people share information amongst themselves, too. We're not working in a silo. So it's kind of fun because sometimes, with your other PR colleagues, you're like, hey, have you worked with that one journalist? And, did they produce and say what they were going to? Mm-hmm. So, listen, I can send somebody to, probably 50 countries if they produce well. Yeah. They can get a lot of stories out of, our client base.
Right.
And we're in literally 7 continents, including Antarctica. We have clients in. So it's in their best interest to be pretty straightforward and upfront and produce
It
great
really
work.
It sure is, but the travel writer always is something of an anomaly to me. I don't consider myself a travel writer. I'm more of a business writer and trying to be more towards a industry conduit so people understand and I can educate them on stuff. But some of those travel writers they seem to be in it just for the trips. I mean, sure they have the outlets that they work with are great, but it's a distinct, unique type of personality that you're dealing with a lot of times.
I think that's true. Although, again, we're not working on big quantities. I mean, we're not working with a big tourist board that just wants tons of bodies. Mm-hmm. But, the other thing is we're not just working with travel writers, and that's the beauty of working with high-end luxury hotels. So we're working with the editor-in-chiefs of the top food publications, the design publications, fashion. We work with Vogue, Architectural Digest, Golf Magazine, bridal publications, Forbes magazine, the Journal, but the Journal, all kinds of different writers. Yeah. Same with any of the daily newspapers. We're not just working with travel editors. It might be food. It might be design, style. So if we were working with travel writers all day, we'd be done by noon. Luckily, we get to be very creative with how we're, promoting our clients, because a lot of times they hire the best architects and designers and chefs. So it becomes very rich and deep and, kind of a lot of robust content that we're able to put out there.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about right now is content. We're all trying to fill that never-ending desire for more and more content. So it's really great that you work with so much depth for each of these types of properties. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about how you're able to cut through the clutter, because there's so much content out there, and get some of your clients to, shine and reach that consumer consciousness.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of a couple different examples that, I was just on a press trip to Switzerland, for instance, and we did two different hotels of ours in Switzerland. One was in Zurich, the Dolder Grand, and one was in Stade, which is in the Alps. Both are leading hotels in the world. Both are independent, and both have amazing spas. So what we did is not went to the typical travel writer, but we really wanted to promote wellness. Switzerland is really known for wellness and medical wellness, and people from all over the world go to Switzerland to, come back a little bit younger, brighter, and happier. And so we brought journalists that were, again, more on the health, wellness, beauty side, and we crafted experiences for them. We brought the president from Christian Florian to Switzerland, and Christian Florian's originally a Swedish cosmetologist, and she designed these incredible line that's very, very large, probably 150 products, and they have a lot of them in this spa. So again, we were promoting a destination, we were promoting the hotel, we were promoting the spa, but we were promoting it to a very specific type of audience that is very interested in high-end luxury spa experience that we're, in wellness. So it's very strategic in how you have to kind of wind your way through different audiences and different demographics that you're trying to reach. So one of those reporters actually wrote for the Hollywood Reporter. So that was a really significant part of our strategy, is because, tapping into that entertainment, LA, New York, whether it was on the actor, producer side, they're very well traveled. They'll spend the money to go. They have more flexibility in time. So these are all things that go into the thinking of how are we going to approach, a particular need of our clients. In this case, they wanted to promote their wellness spa offerings and not just be a business hotel in Zurich, so to speak.
So it all has to be a good story. So it's different for each one, but are there specific elements that make up a good story that's easily translatable to these folks that you're working with on the journalism side?
Listen, food is always translatable. And again, anything that's experiential, anything that we can, bring to life. This Dolder Grand in Switzerland, they have the owner is a very successful business person in Switzerland. He happens to have an incredible collection of art, from Jasper Johns to Salvador Dali to Andy Warhol, but just, all over the hotel at any given place. So, again, this is not really an amenity. It's just sort of, it's something that really is a passion of the owner that he wants to expressively share with the people that come to the hotel. It's not really part of their strategy to we're an art hotel. That's not part of their, their mandate. But it's really one of those things that becomes kind of really special thing that you take away once you're there. You realize, wow, somebody's really been sharing with me, like, Tate Gallery quality art that I can just, when I'm at breakfast, can sit and experience. So, it's sometimes our clients are amongst like something like great art, and they don't really even know how wonderful it is. And we had the president of Lungarno Collection in town a couple weeks ago, and he met with a journalist, and he was telling the story about how the hotel closed for renovation, and they'd had all of these amazing masters drawings all over the hotel, and they had to take them out because they were doing this renovation, and they were going to store them and kind of restore them before they put them back up. The hotel's opening back up in June. It's right on the Arno in Florence. It's the Lungarno Hotel. And when somebody was going to appraise this collection, the appraisal house realized that one of the master's drawings had been stolen.
Oh, boy.
But replaced with something else, replaced with a forgery.
Wow.
So, and they don't really even know when this was, because this hotel is very old, and so they didn't have like security cameras, and it's been hanging up on this wall. It could have been 6 months ago or, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows? So it's kind of fun. So he was sort of telling this, and so it's become kind of part of like the story of like this art collection, and they've been trying to figure out what possibly it is. It's like kind of turned into a little bit of a mystery, if you will. And, so you just don't know sometimes what becomes a fun, interesting, kind of special story. But that's because hotels ultimately are more than just, a bed and, a nice breakfast in the morning. It's a place that people go, they usually go back to, they have a visceral experience, and they like those kind of stories. They like to know a little bit of the background and the history and, what the heart and soul of it is. And I think that's why people have such a connection to hotels overall. And so it's up to us to kind of really spend a lot of time at our clients, with our clients, and, those stories then sort of start bubbling to the surface. And it's the things that get us excited. So I think that's my job, is to like find, and that's why I love independent hotels so much, because usually there's some sort of interesting story about why a particular owner bought a hotel and what they're doing to renovate it or why. And then it's up to me to like hire amazing staff that has an appreciation for travel, for hotels, for the beauty behind it, whether it's the design or just the narration in terms of its history. So it's a very exciting industry to be in. And, like last night when I was at this Forbes travel guide event, it's like for their 5-star hotels, I was amongst some of the best hoteliers, and I love that they call them all innkeepers, even though it's, the president of Taj Hotels was there, and the president of Rosewood, and, the Montage people, and the Dorchester Collection, and they have like 80 Four Seasons hotels that are on the list.
Right, now I'm getting pissed I wasn't there. Damn it.
I was completely nerding out because
no doubt
all these incredible, as they call them, innkeepers, people who are just so passionate about hospitality and hotels in particular.
Wow. That's unbelievable. All right. So before we wrap up, you got to tell me like one like horrible journalist story. You can change the names, protect the innocent, but I got to hear how horrible some of my coworkers are out there.
Oh, jeez. Fortunately, I don't have a ton of stories, and it's nothing that I'm kind of keeping from you.
Yeah.
I would say that there was a time that I was on a press trip to an unnamed Caribbean
Fair enough. Yeah.
Island, and this person just always had something wrong. It was like she wasn't in the right room. Why didn't she have like, the ocean front? The food wasn't quite right, and just everything was sort of off for her. And I kept always getting like the phone call back in my room of like, why, So one night we were leaving the resort and we were going into town, and we had reserved like a little minivan. We'd had reserved into town dinner. We were going to dinner. And we were probably like it was probably 20 minutes away. We were probably 10 minutes off the property, heading into town. And I realized I had forgotten that journalist back at the resort. And I realized it probably was self-preservation. And then, but also self-sabotage, because then I was like, she was like, oh my gosh, how could you have left me? And so I had to have like a cab send her, and I just never really quite heard the end of it. But I think that I was sort of had blocked her out of, I did my whole count on the bus, and I'm usually like the camp counselor when I bring journalists with me. But, listen, I will say that we've had, plenty of cranky journalists, and we try to be very, thoughtful and appreciative and of like maybe whatever their concern is. Because ultimately, one of the things that I think that's really important for my staff to understand is my clients are 5-star luxury hotels all around the world. They're used to the best providing the best service. So therefore, we have to provide, whether they consciously or unconsciously say it, we have to provide them the best service. So part of that is we have to be, again, sort of an extension of their team, even though we might not be on property. We have to handle any and all of these like cranky concerns with a fair amount of, grace, even though we can hang up the phone and sometimes, want to pull our hair out.
Oh, no. Yeah, no doubt. And it has been more than a decade that I've been on a formal type of a press trip. But back in the early days of my career, I used to do them very frequently. And there was always one Jerky McJerkface on every single press trip. They really had a sense of entitlement about it. And it always used to annoy the heck out of me as the journalist. But I always sympathized with what you folks would have to go through.
We'll have to get you on one of our trips. Because, I just took this Switzerland trip, and I don't always take that many press trips anymore. But I came back, and I was so delighted by, I probably took like 5 journalists with me. I said, one of the things I loved is that everybody ate meat and cheese and drank wine, and there was no special requests for this, that, and the other thing. Like, I need a high floor, I need a, warming bed or something. Like, it just, honestly, it was so delightful. Everybody was so just easy and smart and communicative and just lovely. Well, but it doesn't always happen that way, because now that I'm like thinking about it, I'm thinking about all these like. I'll tell you one other quick story.
Please.
I was in Italy on a press trip. It was going great, and we went to this Relais Chateau restaurant that we were brought special to. It wasn't really part of the group that we were in, but we, the hotel got us like this amazing reservation. And the owner came out and he's like, "Oh, I've got this like one case of wine that's like super special from this vineyard. They don't produce a lot. We only get one case. And I want to share one bottle with you all."
Wow.
And everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." And he poured it for everybody. Everybody was just delighted and like so appreciative, and they loved it. And then I had one journalist who's like, "That was so amazing. Can we have another bottle?"
No.
I was
way.
and then of course I like practically jumped over and, and I was like, "No, thank you. That's okay." And meanwhile, I'm like, really? The man just made the biggest deal about like, this is the only case he's going to get from this whole vineyard for the whole year. And he's giving us, like gracing us with one
like
of
that's
these beautiful
the whole
bottles.
month's supply right there.
No, the whole year's supply.
No, one bottle on a case, 12 bottles per case, right? So that's the whole month's supply right there. And it's like, that's just gross. That's
I know.
Really
so
gross.
that was a long time ago, and those people don't stay on your list. They don't get reinvited.
No, they do not.
But I would say most journalists are incredible, super, professional, and I'm saying that because I wouldn't love doing what I do as much as I did if I didn't also. I love the hotels and I love the hoteliers, but the journalists behind it, and again, all the way across the board from travel to business to trade to bridal to architecture, fashion, design, whatever it is, everybody's, I think just been very, we're lucky because we have a great product too, though.
Yeah.
If we weren't working with such amazing hotels, I think that it would be a little bit more of a struggle.
Well, it's definitely more of a challenge, but I don't want to take anything away from you and your fabulous team and what you guys are able to accomplish. If you open up Condé Nast Traveler, Travel and Leisure, Vanity Fair, Time Magazine, Robb Report, Town and Country, Forbes, on and on and on, you're going to see stories that were placed by the good folks at Hawkins International Public Relations. Is there anything else that you want to add? I'd love to hear you to throw out a shameless plug. How can we find you? How can we work with you? All of that kind of good stuff.
You know, that's very kind. You know, anybody that has any follow-up interest in public relations, specifically as it relates to hospitality, happy to talk to you. I love what I do. We're always looking for great, new, fabulous talent from every level. Always looking for great, new, fabulous hotels and resorts around the globe. And you can find us at hawkpr.com, or you can email me at jennifer@hawkpr.com.
Or if the computer frightens you, call 212-255-6541.
Absolutely. Yes. Nothing like a little one-on-one contact.
Excellent. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here with me today. I so appreciate it. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you. You're a great show and big fan.
Great. Thank you so much. And guys, I'm psyched. Stick around, because after this commercial break, we talk to an analyst from the Points Guy. What's the best airline? What's the worst airline? We're going to find out, unless, of course, I decide to just go on safari in Botswana. I'll see you right back after this break.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey, everybody. Glenn here. All right, so this is not part of the show, but this is an ad for something I really believe in. It's the California Lodging Investment Conference. And the great thing is it's only one day. That's Thursday, March 9th, 2017. It's going to be held in Orange County. Now, if you're in California as a hotelier or doing business with California hoteliers, this is going to be a great opportunity to get together for an amazing day of learning, professional development, and networking. It's hosted by my good buddy, Craig Sullivan. He's a conference chair, and he's really launching this conference. Why? To make sure that fellow industry leaders support the community and educate emerging talent. That's where you guys come in. Be sure to attend, and you're going to have a great time. You're going to learn and maybe even get some new opportunity. So again, the California Lodging Investment Conference is going to be located at the Hilton Irvine Orange County Airport on March 9th, 2017. That's coming up really fast, so make sure you visit their website, clickconference.com. That's CLICKONFERENCE.com. clickconference.com.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Kind of go into it. So, you know, I love traveling, but I hate traveling at the same time.
Don't we all?
Yeah, don't we all? Because, you know, airplanes, as fun as they can be, the whole process kind of sucks, but we got to know what are the good airlines, what are the bad airlines, and I got with me Julian Markill. He's an analyst with the Points Guy. Man, I'm psyched to have you here with me today. First of all, I told you, before we turned on the microphones, I was going to blow a little smoke up your butts and stuff like that, but the Points Guy site is kind of everything that I wish I was doing in a way. It's interesting, it's fun, it's different, and it's highly informative. How did you get involved with it?
Yeah, I've only been with this site for a little while, but I've been writing for years about Points and Miles. I worked for World Wrestling Entertainment as a producer and director, so I was flying every single week for 2 years straight, basically. And it's sort of like one of those things where there's a subculture around WWE about travel, because everybody's doing it. Everyone's traveling in and out of the shows.
Right. Forget anything with airlines. Forget anything with points. I want to talk about WWE, or back when I was going the WWF. I had a buddy in the 80s. We were like still teenagers and stuff, but somehow he started taking photographs of wrestling and then got in with the wrestling magazines, and then before you know it, he's a 16-year-old kid getting behind the scenes access to everything.
It's like Almost Famous with the wrestling, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely hysterical. Really fun, really interesting. And, this is where I like to just show off and brag because that's how I have to lead my life. I went to the first ever WrestleMania.
Wow.
So, King Kong Bundy win in 8 seconds flat.
Wow. That was an event. That's historical. I agree.
Right.
Yeah, the first one.
That was pretty cool. I love the whole wrestling thing. I love the cartoonish nature of it and by how there used to actually be a debate. Is this real or is this not real?
Yeah. Well, of course it's all real. It's all real good performances.
Right. So, how did you get involved with something like that?
Well, I have a background in TV. That's where I first started, and I had done quite a bit of directing work. And I had a friend actually who was the head writer there at the time, and he was looking for someone to direct and produce their backstage segments. And he called me and said, "Listen, I think this would be perfect for you. Would you be interested?"
Yep.
And I was actually really interested in getting on the road. I hadn't done a lot of traveling at that point. This is 5, 6, 7 years ago. And this was going from basically 0 to 1,000 in one shot. All of a sudden, I'm on a plane every week, 4, 5, 6 legs, depending on where we were going. Woo. So, yeah.
That's a whole lot of travel, a whole lot of airplanes, a whole lot of hotels. So is that where your love of points and benefits started to come from?
Exactly. And like I was saying, backstage, everybody was talking about their points, their miles. Hey, what's this? Do you have, you Delta Diamond is great, et cetera, et cetera. So if you wanted to be cool, you had to know it. But then, of course, the more you do it, it's addictive. You really do want to accumulate. It's like a game, more points are better. So
it really is. I wonder what that was like behind stage. I could imagine the wrestlers talking like they were gonna fight each other in the ring, but with Mean Gene Okerlund or something like that, right? Yeah. Oh, so it's got the best points program there is. No, it's Marriott.
Right? I mean, the talent they have to travel too, and they are watching their points too, and they've got their status too. So,
right?
Absolutely.
Which of the wrestlers that you worked with was most fervent about points?
Oh gosh, I don't know who was most fervent, but probably the person who was least fervent was oh gosh. I'm sorry. I haven't.
Going back some time.
Yeah, right. No, my gosh, this is going to be embarrassing that I couldn't remember his name.
Was that like the Goldberg?
No, era? I mean, I was literally going to say John Cena. I couldn't remember his name for a second. He's only the biggest star there still to this day. So.
My kids joke about John Cena because he seems to be everywhere.
John Cena is, just from working with him, he is literally a terrific guy. He was very, very pleasant and easy to work with, but he also travels a lot by bus. So not entirely, but that's what he does. So it's not that he didn't have interest in points and miles, but it wasn't necessarily a priority for him.
So was he a Greyhound fan or a Megabus fan?
He did a little better than Greyhound and Megabus. I seem to recall he may have had something set up.
Yeah, so, Julian, I used to back in the 90s, once I was of age, I'd take the bus occasionally from Port Authority down to Atlantic City.
I made that trip too. Oh yeah.
So it's been a while. You know the smell.
Yeah, but they used to have, and I don't even know if they still do, you could get a rebate of your ticket, of your bus ticket when you got to the casino. Depending on which casino you got to, you would get a certain amount back of your ticket, sometimes more than what you paid.
And that was the best. And so long ago they would give you the rolls of quarters and like $5 off the buffet.
Yeah.
And $10 for the next time you come back, and you were feeling like a player.
Oh yeah. I mean, on the way, that 2-hour trip back on the bus, I don't know how much you felt like a player then, but yes. On the way there, it was all winners. So.
It's true. It's like those flights to Vegas. Everyone's like, woo! On the way out, and on the way back, it's like, don't bother me.
I gotta go to work tomorrow. Oh my gosh.
It's so true. All right. So, you did the WWE, or like I said, back in the WWF before those World Wildlife Federation people got involved.
Well, World Wildlife Fund, but yes.
Yeah, fun,
yes,
right.
Yeah.
I like, I guess World Wrestling Federation is what it was. I'm getting all of
all
my abbreviations all mixed up. But, okay. So Julian, how did you get involved with the points guy? And more interestingly, how did you become an analyst, and what is an analyst all about?
Yeah, that's a very good question. How do you go from one to the other? Well, during my WWE time, as I said, I really really became focused on points and miles because it was part of the thing.
Right.
But I just got really interested in valuations and what was worth my time and what wasn't. I also had a background as a writer. I had done writing for TV and film in Los Angeles. So after I was done with the WWE, I wanted to take that knowledge and do something with it, and I began writing for some of the smaller sites about points and miles. And over the years, I built up my knowledge, my abilities to write about this stuff, and eventually I had enough experience to be considered for an analyst position here at the Points Guy.
That's pretty cool. So what do you do as an analyst? Because I see a lot of the hotel industry analysts. I see an analyst like you, and it seems to me a really fun, interesting job. Kind of like what I do when I was more of a strict journalist, researching, understanding, and then the best part is getting to talk about it.
Yeah, and that is the best part, is getting to write about it. Yeah, what your job is as an analyst, as a writer at the Points Guy, is to find where there is value and where there is not value.
Right.
And especially when there are changes. That's when things that were valuable maybe no longer are valuable, or the other way around. Things that didn't have value, programs that didn't have value, points that weren't worth collecting might suddenly become worth collecting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and the companies are constantly changing their program.
Constantly changing, indeed. And I know we promised we're going to talk about the best and worst in U.S. Airlines, but that is a concern that I have. And Hilton recently just unveiled a brand new changes to their program. It makes a lot of sense in some ways. But one of the issues that I seem to be having and that I'm concerned about is I think traditional loyalty is dead or dying. You're shaking your head yes. Why would you agree?
Well, almost everybody is moving from the previous model, the old model, where it was based on how much you flew or how much you stayed, either in miles or nights or stays, meaning several nights within one visit to a hotel. And almost everyone now is moving towards revenue, how much you pay. Mm-hmm. Basically, the more people pay, the more loyalty they're given, the more perks they're given. Right. Certainly from a business perspective, that's not unreasonable from the company's side. They want to reward the people who are spending the money. But there is more to loyalty than just money. Loyalty may not be the guy with the biggest bankroll. Sometimes it's the guy that goes out of his way, or his or her way, to stay at a hotel that's not that convenient because of the loyalty, because of the elite program or the points.
Right. And those guys, I think, are starting to be ignored a lot more in favor of the top 10% of travelers. And it's really frustrating me as a traveler. Let's just take a look at the airlines, for example. And for those of you who listen to the show, I'm staying at a lot of independent hotels. I'm staying sometimes comped at hotels. I don't really accrue the amount of points in hotels. So I'm more of a airplane guy. Very loyal to one particular airline, Delta Airlines, and not because I think they're the best airline, because it just worked out that way, right? And now I guess I'm in it, right? But over the last few years, Delta's really changed their program, and they moved from what you were saying, from the actual mile system to a dollar-based system. And I find it, as a customer, it's really super frustrating, because I'm getting punished for knowing that we're recording this on March 1st, that I'm traveling in June or August and buying my tickets at the price they're asking.
Right.
And then they're screwing me for paying the price that they want. Then, on top of that, they keep pushing it, farther and farther and farther, the amount of dollars. In order to make platinum this past year, you needed $9,000, or $7,500 spend the year before that. I spent $8,500, and I was not going to take a trip, because they don't give you money for taxes. So I would need to spend a $700 flight in order to get the benefits of platinum, which at this point, they started to cut back a lot of benefits. I'm not so sure. And what this is all going up to is, other than the fact that I get to go online Sky Priority and maybe not have to pay a bag fee, I don't know. It's not really doing anything for me anymore.
Yeah, it depends on. It really depends on how much you fly and what your travel patterns are as to whether elite status still makes sense.
Right.
Especially with hotels. Just to go back to that for a moment, you mentioned you don't even stay in chain hotels at this point.
No, I stay in chain hotels, but a lot of times I'm not able to accrue the points that it makes a demonstrable difference to my experience.
Gotcha. Right. And that's not unusual. Hotel programs have historically been less valuable because the hotel industry works differently.
Right.
Most individual hotels are not owned by their chains.
That's
It's just
right.
a management contract. So that it's a lot harder to have value and also to keep consistency in the program from property to property. The airlines obviously own all their planes and they run their own program, or them and their regional carriers. So with Delta, just to talk about what you were talking about, and you're referring to the medallion qualified dollars.
That's right.
The dollars metric, which they added just a couple of years ago. Our recommendation is always on that is to waive that entire qualification by putting spend on the credit card.
Which kind of pisses me off. Also, I now have the Delta Platinum credit card from American Express, and if I spend the $25,000, then it will waive
per year
dollar qualification.
Right, then you don't even have to think about it.
Right.
So, but what is your at the Points Guy? One of the techniques that we use to accumulate a lot of points is credit cards. That's where, especially in this country, the U.S., credit cards are a huge industry, and there's a lot of valuable loyalty points that can be accumulated that way. So what is your regular credit card? Like, what is your everyday card? Do you have one?
Yeah. I mean, I use, for the family, I use an American Express Gold card, but we
Okay.
also have, point cards that are related to our Citibank accounts through Visa, MasterCard, whatever. And now you can accrue points just through using debit purchases as well.
Yeah, which city cards? I'm just interested. Do you happen to know?
I would have to pick
That's
out.
okay. That's all right.
It's all right. I can pull out my wallet
Yeah.
here. You know, I like to look really cool and stuff. All right, so Julian, you fill time while I'm pulling out my wallet.
I see.
Here's a
Glenn has
Citibank
brought out his.
MasterCard.
He's
I've got
okay. This is your debit card, right?
That
okay.
one too. Also, debit
and this is a
credit card
city
for
business.
my bank account, for
So
my
these
work
are
account.
these are your debit cards, right?
Yes.
Both of them. Okay. And then do you have any other credit cards?
Just the two American Expresses, and then
the
I have
gold.
a backup emergency one in case,
Sure.
but I don't really use
Which
it.
is wise, though, to always have something
Yeah.
that you know works. So if you got in trouble. So the question is then, does it make sense for you to take some of that debit card spend and put it on your Delta card so you don't have to worry about that dollars qualification?
Right.
Maybe not. It depends on whether that elite status is valuable.
Right. For me, it's I want to keep the work card, and the home card. The home card for tax purposes. It's easier. Blah blah blah. blah, blah.
At some point, it can get so complicated it's not worth it.
Right,
So,
exactly. And I'm not very good with numbers, except for worrying about the number of downloads that people are doing for this show. So please tell your friends, tell your family, tell strangers on the street, download the No Vacancy podcast. All right.
Yes. To answer your original question, the airlines have definitely devalued their elite statuses along with the actual what we call redeemable miles, meaning the miles you accumulate that you can redeem for flights. They are giving less and requiring more. And a lot of that is a function of the fact that the economy is not only good right now, but the airlines are doing bang up business.
Oh my God.
They are making money like they never have historically in practically their entire existence.
Right. And if you look at the entire history of the airline industry, probably up until now, if you in aggregate, it's never made money.
No. The U.S. airline industry has never done very well up until probably the last 3-4 years, at which point everybody's doing well. And part of that is because of the consolidation in the industry. They just don't have to compete as much.
That's true. I'm paying $500 now for a flight that used to be $300 2 years ago.
Sure. And in addition, you're probably paying, or maybe you aren't, but other people are paying baggage fees, change fees that can be $200 per ticket. So, yeah.
I'm not paying any of those fees, but I hate the flight change fees at $200 a ticket, and then you have to pay for whatever the change in fare is.
Yeah, when we did our study, which we'll get to in a few minutes, baggage and change fees, we made sure to include as one of our criteria because they're just hated by most people and gotten kind of ridiculous in a couple of different ways. So.
Yeah, because they're really obnoxious, and that's one of the things that I like about Southwest is they don't nickel and dime you in the traditional sense. They build it into just their regular fares, which I think customers like more. The airlines have decided in groupthink that they want that customers are demanding everything to be unbundled, as they call it. I don't think so.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I don't think it has anything to do with customer demand.
Right.
I think it has to do with the fact
Wall Street demand.
Right. The airlines basically can do that. The reason for the airlines to do this is they can keep the main airfare number down. And if you look at it historically, airfare has actually gone down over 30 or 40 years when adjusted for inflation, but then added in fees later. So when you add it all together, it hasn't gone down. But if you look at just the airfare component, which is is how most people book their tickets. They go on Expedia or Orbitz, they put in their cities and the date and what's the cheapest flight, and if it works for them time-wise, that's probably the one they're going to pick.
Right. And I used to have discussions with the person who ran the finances for a company that I worked with prior to this, and I'd be like, no, I don't care if that's a $50 cheaper round trip, because I'm going to have to spend $50 each way for a bag. I'm more likely to get upgraded with my current airline, which means that I'll probably get some free meals and I'll be in better mental health when I get there. Why would you try to save $50 and be penny wise and pound foolish? So I never understood that.
And especially, when you're booking a ticket personally, that's an easy calculation to make. But if you're working for a company and they have a policy that says lowest airfare is what you have to take, which many companies do, and they're not taking into account the bags you're going to expense, the change fees that you might have to pay if the trip changes. It's a little short-sighted, but it's the way companies work. So sometimes you're just stuck with that policy.
Right, yeah. Fortunately, I'm not. I'm on my own right now. I make all of my decisions. And Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta, if you're listening right now, send me a little love. Maybe bump me up to, platinum. Come on, I missed it by just a little bit.
Does that ever work? Because it doesn't work for us.
Actually, it worked once. Not that, but a number of years ago, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, I got interviewed for Reuters about Delta making a big effort to capture business travel in New York when they first started really expanding here in our city. And I made some comments. It got in Reuters, got nationally syndicated as part of the article. 2 days later, I got a call from the people at Delta, and they bumped me up to diamond status from my then gold status as a thank you for saying nice things to them.
Yeah, we don't get those offers, and I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be able to accept them. It's interesting. In our study, we had a few surprises, and we'll get into it. Yeah. And a lot of some readers have said, "Oh, you're in cahoots with whatever," and I always respond with, number one, none of these airlines even knew we were doing a study until it was released the same day that all the readers saw it and everybody saw it. And number two, why would we do that? That doesn't really make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. But as amazing it is to be diamond status is as horrible it is when you don't qualify the next year and you become a mortal.
The step down to just being a member.
Yeah. Right. Every time I check in, they're like, "Thank you for being a gold member."
Right.
I still feel compelled to say, well, I used to qualify as a platinum member until your CEO screwed me. But
tell your whole story. Well, you see, here's how it went. I was important once. Now I'm a little less important. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I want to talk about the best and worst airlines. This big study you put out. No surprise there. I just want to go right to the bottom. Spirit, not a surprise there. Something about those guys, man. They just, I know you're going to try to be a little bit more impartial, but it always seems that they nickel and dime the heck out of you, and they seem to hate their customers. I don't know what it is.
I can't speak to whether they hate their customers.
Yeah.
I will say this. What we did in our study, which was different than what most of these sort of airline ranking surveys come up with, is, first of all, like I said, we wanted to cover every aspect of the airline industry as broadly as possible, but we also wanted to use hard numbers, objective data, versus reader surveys, which a lot of places do, or things like that, or places that use objective numbers but only look at a small slice like on-time arrivals.
Yeah.
So when we put Spirit in last place, which we did, they were number 10 out of 10.
Right.
That's based on hard numbers. It's based on the worst performance across all 10 airlines in on-time arrivals.
I hate those on-time arrival things because it's such a scam. Like anytime you fly out of LaGuardia, they add 4 hours to your flight so that way they could brag that they got there early when you're stuck on, when you're only stuck on the runway an hour instead of an hour and a half.
Yeah, the airlines have been accused of padding their schedules. That's what they call that. And the airline's response, which I think has some validity to it, is that, well, number one, it's not our fault that LaGuardia is congested. Right. We're building in the amount of time it's going to take us from the time we push off to the time we take off. And number two, if we schedule a flight to be half an hour longer, that means the flight that comes after it with that same plane can't leave until that one's landed. So we're getting less flights out by padding by adding time to our schedule.
And I happen to agree with that because as a customer, I like the idea of knowing when I'm really going to arrive and not having to second guess it. It's irrelevant to me that it's an hour and 27 minutes in the air and an hour on the runway as opposed to somewhere else where it's 10 minutes on the runway and 2 hours in the air, right?
It takes you what it takes to get there.
But I don't think it's a fair metric to judge an airline's quality and performance on at the same time.
Understood, yeah. What we did is we didn't use the DOT data, the Department of Transportation, which is sort of what the federal government collects from the airlines. We used data from a company called OAG, which factors in. It doesn't factor in padding because of the reasons we just talked about.
OAG? Oh, that's not the same as that's OTG, the food people at the airports.
No,
okay. I'm like, food and airline service.
Different company, yeah. But they factor in not just the on-time arrivals, but the delays, the cancellations, and they're looking at, I believe it's 85 million flights across the whole globe. This study was domestic only, but they have a massive amount of data that they're basing their numbers on. So it's a little more advanced than just the straight up DOT information.
All right. So you approach this really smart with 10 different wide-ranging factors. You've got the airfare, route networks, bag change fees, cabin comfort, customer satisfaction, frequent flyer programs, on-time arrivals, lost baggage, domestic lounges, and involuntary bumps. And they're not all weighted equally. They're all weighted differently.
Correct. For instance, most people who travel are not going to visit a lounge. They just aren't, because either they don't want to pay for it or they just don't have that much time in the airport. So for lounges, that was a very small percentage, just 2% of our overall weighting. On the other hand, everybody cares what a ticket costs. The airfare is 25% in our survey, and the baggage and change fees are another 10%.
Right, and route networks 15%, which makes a lot of sense because if I can't get there or hamstrung by a route, I may not choose the airline at all.
Right, or if it takes one or two stops versus a nonstop. The more options there are in an airline, then the more likely are you to choose that flight.
All right, so we already know that I can't stand Spirit, and it's really funny because everyone who I ever met that's flown Spirit has had something horrible to say about them. Not to say that they're not lovely people, but the experience that they're serving up is not one that is in concert with the traditional business travel.
Right, and that's the data shows that people's perception of Spirit is very accurate because they are not good by the hard numbers at a lot of these categories. Right. The one thing they are very good at is airfare. They're number one as far as airfare, so you get what you pay for.
Yeah, but then when you've got to pay to carry on a bag, and you got to pay to print out a boarding pass, and you got to probably eventually pay to pee, and all of that kind of stuff.
Agreed. But people are booking based on that price on the Expedia and Orbit screens.
And I find it interesting that then they get to the airport and they realize there are all these other fees. I would have thought by now people would be more savvy to work their way through and understand that the price of the ticket is not the price that you're eventually going to be paying.
Yeah, and some of these travel agencies have tried to make an effort to show disclaimers when something is going to cost more. But the fact is a lot of people just don't travel that much. They just don't fly that often.
Right.
And they have a lot of other things going on in their lives. So you and I travel constantly, but some people might only go once a year. And they're not necessarily familiar. They may not even know what Spirit Airline is.
Exactly.
They certainly don't know their business model involves paying $100 for a carry-on when you get to the gate.
Hey, and my attitude is if you don't know the name of the airline, that's probably a good factor because you didn't watch Crash on the Evening News.
Right.
So
that's true.
It's probably pretty all right.
And the wonderful thing is every one of these airlines has a great safety record, and we're in a time where airline travel is unbelievable, the safest form of transportation ever created by humanity.
Unbelievable.
Number of flights and passengers, and it's zero incidents, almost zero deaths almost every year in this country. It's a miracle.
We haven't had a major airline crash in a number of years. I want to say 2 or 3, but it may be even more.
The last big one, I believe, was the Asiana crash in San Fran, and that wasn't even a U.S. carrier.
Yeah.
It was coming into San Francisco.
Was that the one that hit the runway
hit the
bad?
runway, right.
And that wasn't even like a colossal
disaster. There were, I think, 2 deaths or 3. Right, but it wasn't the loss of 200 people.
Yeah.
Almost everybody got off safely and lived to tell the tale.
So, airline travel, for all I love to complain about it, it is absolutely the most phenomenal, fantastic thing. I mean, I went to London last week. I'm going to Berlin this week, and it's just, you get on a plane and then all of a sudden you're just there in another country, in another city, and I don't want to discount how phenomenal the fact is that we can just travel the way that we can and what that means to society in general. But let's talk about the great airlines. Number one on your list,
Alaska Airlines. And now maybe people are listening to this and saying, yeah, I'm not going to Alaska. That's not helpful. But Alaska Airlines actually has a fairly decent route network in the western U.S., and they're in the process of merging with another airline called Virgin America, who actually did very well too. They're number 3 on our list, and they're going to combine their route networks over the next year or two. If they can maintain the quality of their services, it's going to be impressive.
Is Virgin going to go away and be absorbed?
That is still to be determined. They will certainly become one airline operationally, because that's the way you cut costs and keep it, make the business model make sense. What name they're going to use, what model they're going to use, that's still in discussions. I don't think they're going to use Virgin because they have to pay Richard Branson for that name.
Yeah.
And Richard Branson's already said if they stop using that name, he's going to start another one, also called Virgin. He said,
nice.
We'll see if he actually does.
Like that.
That's what he said. He said he's going to start another one called Virgin.
The good thing about working for Virgin is you don't have to worry about naming things.
Right.
Virgin Hotels, Virgin Galactic, Virgin Cruises is going to be
How
coming
about
out now.
Virgin something. All right, let's do that. All right, that sounds good.
As long as it's not a Virgin cocktail, I'm good. All right, so I love the idea of Virgin Airways, but airlines. I've never flown them because I'm stuck with the Delta thing, and God forbid I don't get my my points.
Right, and of course that's part of the game of elite status is once you're in a system, it's tough to get out of it because you might be getting your upgrades, your free bags, and all of that. And if you switch to another airline, you don't necessarily get all that. The key would probably be, if you really did want to switch, is doing what they call a status match, whereby you go to another airline, say it's United, say it's American, say it's Virgin America, and say, hey, I am Delta Platinum, and I'd like to switch my business to you. What kind of elite status will you give me to match what I have on Delta? And some places will just outright give you status.
Yep.
Some will give it to you on a trial period where you have to then fly more over
Fair
90
enough.
days just to see if you're actually going to do it. It's a great way to switch airlines. You just have to be a little careful because you can generally only do it once, either every few years or maybe sometimes per lifetime, so depending on the program.
Well, I mean, the idea is they want you to be loyal, and they don't want you screwing them and hopping around from system to system.
Exactly.
Right. But I will tell you, I'm flying a non-Delta flight to Berlin, and it's breaking my heart. I think about every one of those miles over the Atlantic Ocean that I'm not getting credit for, and I'm not going to be respected.
Who are you flying?
Air Berlin.
Air Berlin, you could credit them to American, but that doesn't do you any good.
No, and then I've got to go through Chicago to get to a speaking gig out in California, the California Lodging Investment Conference. It's not too late to attend that event in Orange County on March 9th. Go to clickconference.com. All right, so I'm flying American Airlines from Chicago out there, and I've got second to last row, middle seat.
Out from Chicago to California?
Yeah.
That's going to be a long flight in
That's
that
going to be
second to
painful.
last row.
Middle
seat.
At least I didn't have a flight immediately preceding it all the way from Germany.
Yeah.
So I won't. Oh, wait, I'm screwed.
It's tough when you've gotten used to flying up front. It's tough to, especially in a long flight, to go in the coach, as they call it.
Yeah, Julian, you're too easy to talk to, so we're totally getting off off the topics here. Alaska's the best airline. Overall, why do you feel it's the best airline according to your research?
Yeah, Alaska has a reputation as running a really good airline, and the data shows they really are. They came in top 4 in more than half of our categories. They were top 4 in on-time arrivals. They were top 4 in customer satisfaction, lost baggage, involuntary bumps. Their frequent flyer program, and by the way, we were talking about this, they're the only ones left who are still awarding miles based on how far you fly versus how much you pay.
Wow.
And they have some really valuable partners. Again, if you don't have an Alaska flight necessarily, or you're not served in the city that Alaska serves, or you're not living in a city Alaska serves, redeeming those miles for some of their partners can be extremely lucrative. So they're just running a really great airline, and really the only thing that's hurting them right now is the small route network. They just aren't serving enough cities, but that's going to change.
How many routes if you know, does Virgin have?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but between both Alaska and Virgin are significantly smaller than the big ones, and combined they still won't be equivalent to the big three
Yeah.
in Southwest, but it'll be quite a step up, and also where they're going, because Virgin America tends to be New York, Washington, Dallas, places like that.
Yeah, and I think Virgin does Las Vegas very well.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
All right, so number 2, holy cow, United, much maligned over the last few years. They seem to be getting their act together. What's going on?
Yeah, that's definitely one of our 2 big surprises in our study. And what it comes down to with United, they definitely have had a rough couple of years as far as reputation. What we found when we got into the hard numbers, they didn't actually win outright in any of our categories, but they did well enough in a lot of them, and they weren't terrible at anything. And that was enough to get them into second place.
I love that. Just don't be terrible.
They really weren't terrible. They weren't bottom 3 in anything.
Right.
So that's saying a lot. It means they're being pretty consistent about their operations. It may not be the top of the line, and their airfares aren't terrible either. So that's what got them into second.
Well, they got a lot of momentum behind them right now, and the big news is the Polaris business class. I just was at the Business Travel Show London last week, where I got to see the chairs and all that. Of course, my airline analyst friend Henry Hardevelt got to actually fly it, so I'm a little jealous. And he also has those cool little airplane models, which I always wanted one of those.
Aren't those cool?
Those they really are.
Yeah.
And you think they have a chance at going up to the number 1 spot with this rate they're going?
Maybe, but I'll say this about United: they've made a real effort to try and turn it around, and it is showing dividends. Whether they can catch Alaska, given that Alaska's only weak point really was the size of their route network, and that is already going to be improved with Virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Alaska's running a really good operation and have been for a while, at least from a reputational standpoint. I'm not discounting United,
totally.
but I think it's going to be tough.
I feel like a lot of this is it's not really about me choosing the airline as much as the airline choosing me because of where I live and where the flights happen to be going from.
Yeah, especially with today's hub system where, United, if you're in, Houston, you're probably taking a United flight because that's one of their hubs.
Right.
If you're in Salt Lake City, you're probably taking a Delta flight because that's their hub, or Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So in some ways you are what we call hub captive if you live in one of those areas. But, and therefore an airline is choosing you, or you have to go out of your way to fly a different airline. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only choice. And while the low-cost carriers do have not the greatest reputation, they're at least keeping the big guys honest.
Right.
Where maybe not from a service perspective, but certainly from an airfare perspective.
How does JetBlue fit in now in the low-cost carrier world? Because I don't feel they're really that anymore.
No, they really aren't, and neither is Southwest,
right.
Which a lot of people still think of Southwest as this low-cost carrier, and they were when they started, but they're not anywhere near that anymore. Southwest is flying more people than almost anyone domestically.
Yeah, right.
And their airfares, quite frankly, in our study, were pretty high. They were second from the top. What they have going for them is the no change fees and the first bag free. To get back to JetBlue, with JetBlue, it's a little bit of a mixed bag.
Right.
They do have some a very good performance in their cabin comfort. They have those seats that have a little more room than most airlines, and the in-flight live TV, pretty much everybody loves that. They also do very well when it comes to lost baggage. They don't mishandle a lot of bags. But on the other hand, they're not great at on-time arrivals. They're second from the bottom in that category. Yeah. They're also not great in involuntary bumps, which involuntary bumps, if people don't know, that's when they've oversold a flight, they've asked for volunteers, they don't get enough volunteers, and somebody who wants to get on the plane isn't going to get on the plane. And somebody is very angry about that.
No doubt.
In all fairness to all these airlines, it happens very rarely, but It does happen.
And they also have no choice because they can't afford to just book the flight 100% full. They got to book it at 108% or whatever it is because of the natural attrition.
Exactly. That's why they oversell it, and they have a lot of algorithms as to how much they can safely oversell, but every so often that algorithm didn't quite work out and somebody's not getting on the plane. They work very hard to get volunteers. Everybody does, so that they don't have to bump somebody.
And there's nothing cooler than them saying, "Hey, I'll give you $500 to stick around for 3 hours."
Yeah, well, and it's important if you're getting that offer to see if it's going to go a little higher. Just negotiate a little bit. They have a lot of power at that point.
I don't like this auctioning thing that they're doing now, where they're trying to race you to the bottom really fast.
Now you mean auctioning about upgrades?
It's like not upgrades. It's if the flight is oversold, how much would you be willing to take? So
Right.
it's almost like a reverse auction.
Yeah.
You're trying to get as little as possible.
Yeah, because they don't want to get stuck with
Right.
paying $400, $500, $600 for someone to not get on the plane. They'd rather get you early on and say, well, how about $75?
Yeah.
How about that? So, yeah, my advice is usually when they're offering you that at check-in is when it usually happens. I would wait. I would wait for a better offer.
Yeah, I like that. Any other thoughts, advice? We're already way over our allotted time.
I'll talk about one other
Yeah.
item on our study because that's the other big surprise, which is Delta, your airline,
Yep.
at number 7.
No.
Yeah. Now, let's
Wah, wah.
be clear about this. Delta has had a good reputation in recent years for the way they run their airline, and when we look at the data, that's true. They get very good marks in the service categories. On-time arrivals, they're third from the top. Customer satisfaction, they're third from the top. Involuntary bumps, they're second from the top. They do very well when it comes to that. And of course, they're a big airline. The size of their network is impressive. Where they got hurt is in airfare. They were the most expensive airline in our study, and we weighted airfare 25%, a full quarter. So with Delta, if you want to get from A to B on time with your bag, Delta's probably a pretty good choice, but you might pay a little more.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I am overall satisfied with that. Besides the magic of flying and never being dead when I travel.
Right.
Take that aside. I can have my first world problems. I still think it's a great airline in the sense that the staff is probably the one thing that's kept me going. I've got an airport on Long Island, about 15 minutes from my house, that has Southwest flight. I prefer to drive all the way to JFK or LaGuardia to take Delta, just because I can get more direct flights, and I like the people that are in the airline as well.
And I'm sure Delta, that's exactly what they want. That's what they're hoping that you'll do. So there you go.
Yeah, but they don't like me enough to bump me up to Platinum so I can choose those economy comfort seats or Delta Comfort Plus or whatever you're calling it this week. I don't know. I get confused. They change it so often. All right. Julian, any other final thoughts or words here?
The only other thing I'd say is when you're searching for a flight, when you are flying somewhere and you're going on and you're taking a look at the flight, make sure that the price isn't the only thing you're looking at. There's so much information available now to you. If you go to Google Flights, which is what mostly our preferred search engine because it's very quick and it gives you everything and it's unbiased. Not only does the price come up, but all the amenities in the cabin. Are you going to have Wi-Fi? If that's important, like if you're business, it is important. If you're working, is there in-seat power? All of those factors matter. So I would, and also again, those baggage and change fees. Are they onerous? Are they going to offset your airfare?
Right.
So that would be what I'd emphasize is really look at the overall experience when you book your ticket.
I find Delta's Wi-Fi fees to be rude and onerous at this point. They are super expensive.
Well, the several credit cards will give you free go-go passes.
Oh.
So Amex Platinum and a couple others.
All right,
So
well, thank you.
Might be worth looking at.
That is a good tip and well worth my time. I got Julian Mark Keel of the Points Guy. Give a shameless plug, please.
Yes, thepointsguy.com, thepointsguy.com, and come to us for all your travel-related news and especially points and miles.
Great. Love it. I want to thank you guys for listening. It was great having you. Make sure that, again, share the show with your friends. Give me that 5-star rating on iTunes. What do I have to do to get you to do that? Thank you so much for listening, and I will be back next week, unless that is, of course, decide to drop everything and start going out on the road with the WWE. See you guys next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.